You wake up tired, not because your body has given out, but because your mind made its decision before your alarm even sounded. Before your feet hit the floor, before the day has asked anything of you, a quiet voice somewhere deep inside has already whispered that today is not the day, that tomorrow will be better, that you have earned a little more rest. And in that whisper lives one of the most dangerous forces in human life. Not failure, not bad luck, not a lack of talent, but the slow, invisible erosion of potential that comes from choosing comfort over and over again, until it becomes the only choice you know how to make. This is what laziness actually is. Not a personality defect, not a moral failing. It is a deeply wired neurological pattern, one your brain has been quietly perfecting for years. Every time you chose the easy path, your brain released a small reward, a whisper of dopamine, a fleeting sense of relief. And because the brain is a pattern recognition machine, it filed that away. It learned that avoiding discomfort equals reward, and it began to make that calculation faster and faster until inaction stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like a reflex. That is why you don't feel lazy. You feel tired, unmotivated, stuck. You look at people around you who seem to move through life with purpose and energy, and you wonder what they have that you don't. The answer is not what most people expect. The truth is this: laziness is not who you are. It is what you have trained your brain to do. And anything that is trained can be untrained. Your brain operates on a principle called neuroplasticity, the ability to reorganize itself, to rewire its pathways based not on your intentions, but on your repeated actions. This is not motivational language. This is neuroscience. Every decision you make, no matter how small, is either reinforcing the habit of inaction or constructing the architecture of discipline. There is no neutral ground. Every morning you lie in bed negotiating with yourself. The neural pathway of avoidance grows a little stronger. And every time you override that voice and move anyway, the pathway of action grows stronger instead. The brain is always being shaped. The question is only whether you are doing the shaping or whether your old habits are. And this is where most people go wrong. They wait. They wait for motivation to arrive like some kind of weather system that will eventually roll in and make everything easier. They wait for the perfect moment, a fresh Monday, a new month, a dramatic turning point. But motivation does not work that way. Motivation is not a starting gun. It is a result. It comes after action, not before it. People like David Goggins understood this at a bone-deep level. They did not wait to feel ready. They moved because the clock was running, because every moment spent waiting was a moment that would never come back, and because they understood that the discomfort they were avoiding was not their enemy. It was the door. When you begin to see laziness as a biological response rather than a personal flaw, something shifts. You stop fighting yourself and start training yourself. And the first step in that training is both simple and brutal. You must act before you feel ready. Your brain will always try to conserve energy. It will always push you toward the path of least resistance. That is not a character flaw. It is biology. But biology is not destiny. You can override the signal. You can move when your mind says stay. You can start when your emotions say wait. And in that moment of override, that fraction of a second where you choose effort over comfort, something powerful begins to happen. Your brain receives new data. It learns that discomfort is survivable, that effort does not destroy you. And slowly, the stranglehold of laziness begins to loosen. But you need to understand something important. The brain will not surrender easily. Just when you feel like you are gaining ground, when a new routine starts to feel possible, the resistance will intensify, the fatigue will deepen, the excuses will become more sophisticated, more convincing, more disguised as wisdom. You will hear things like, "You've already done enough today," or "one missed day won't matter," and it won't matter once. But the brain is always listening. It remembers every concession you make, and one missed day becomes two becomes a week, and the pathway you are building begins to fade, overgrown by the old patterns you never fully uprooted. This is the hidden battlefield. Not your schedule, not your environment, not the people around you, but the interior space where every thought becomes a negotiation between who you are and who you are trying to become. And if you are not aware of that negotiation, you will lose it without ever realizing a fight was taking place. The methods that Goggins and others like him have lived by are not popular because they are pleasant. They are powerful because they are rooted in one uncompromising idea: do the hard thing, especially when you don't feel like it. Not as punishment, not as suffering for its own sake, but because every time you push through resistance, you are making a deposit into the account of your future self. You are strengthening the neural circuits of resilience and effort while weakening the circuits of avoidance. And over enough time, with enough repetition, This rewiring changes your defaults. What once required enormous willpower starts to require less. The behavior that once felt impossible starts to feel like simply what you do. But there's a phase in this process that almost no one warned you about, the plateau. This is the period where your effort feels invisible, where you are showing up consistently, but the results seem stagnant, where nothing appears to be changing. This is the phase that breaks most people. Not because they are weak, but because they misread the silence. They interpret the absence of visible progress as evidence that the process is not working. So they stop. And in stopping, they abandon the exact moment when the deepest transformation was quietly taking place beneath the surface. Because the brain does not change in straight lines, it restructures in layers. The foundation has to be laid before the walls go up. And during that foundational phase, the work is invisible, but it is the most important work of all. If you can stay consistent when there is no visible reward, if you can keep moving when motivation is gone and no one is watching and nothing is cheering you forward, then you have crossed a threshold that most people never reach. You are no longer acting on habit. You are building one. And yes, there will be failures, days when the old patterns win, days when you choose the couch over the commitment. That is not the end of the story. It is part of it. The question is never whether you fall. It is what you do when you do. The people who transform their lives are not the ones who never stumble. They are the ones who refuse to let a stumble become a stop. They analyze, they adjust, and they return without the performance of guilt, without the spiral of self-criticism, without the drama that wastes more energy than the failure itself ever did. As you continue this process, something begins to change at a level deeper than habit. You start to develop self-trust. And self-trust is not the same as confidence. Confidence can be borrowed. Self-trust is built only through the accumulation of kept promises. The small private moments where you said you would do something and then you did it. Not because anyone was watching, but because you had decided that your word to yourself would mean something. That accumulation, invisible to everyone else, becomes the foundation of everything. There is also a danger that comes with success in this process, and it is called complacency. Once discipline starts to feel natural, once the mornings feel easier and the resistance feels smaller, there is a temptation to believe that you have arrived, that you have beaten laziness for good. But growth does not have a finish line. The brain that rewired itself toward discipline can just as easily drift back toward comfort if you stop challenging it. The standard must continue to rise, not because suffering is the goal, but because growth is. And growth, by definition, always requires moving beyond what is already comfortable. This is the mentality that separates temporary improvement from permanent transformation. Those who truly change their lives do not cross the finish line and retire. They understand that discipline is a practice, not a destination. They keep raising the bar, not out of obsession, but out of a commitment to the truth that they are still capable of more. And that belief, that refusal to settle, is what keeps the momentum alive long after the initial fire of motivation has burned down to something quieter and more sustainable. Because that is what this eventually becomes. Not a war against yourself, not a daily battle fueled by rage or fear or the desperate need to prove something. It becomes a quiet, consistent practice, a way of showing up, a relationship with your own potential that is honest, demanding, and deeply respectful of what you are capable of. You will not always feel the change happening. Most of it, LLB invisible. But one day you will look back at who you were, the person who negotiated with the alarm clock, who found 1,000 reasons not to start, who spent more time planning than doing, and you will barely recognize them. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally became who you were always capable of being. That is the truth about breaking the habit of laziness. It is not a single decision. It is not a motivational surge. It is 1,000 small choices made in ordinary moments where no one is watching and nothing is easy that stack on top of each other until they become something undeniable. The question is not whether you are capable of that kind of life. You are. The question is whether you will choose it today, not tomorrow, not when the conditions improve, not when you feel ready, but right now, in this moment, with everything you have. If this message reached something in you, don't let that feeling fade without taking one action, even a small one. And if content like this adds something real to your life, consider subscribing, liking, and turning on notifications so you never miss what comes next.